stress their resources, dismantle their hand, remove their creatures, then turn the corner. That is the way of classic mid-range Jund. As a fan of this strategy, I wanted to personalize my Disa precon deck with Jund classics along with synergistic cards with Disa. So let's talk about Disa. Disa cheats in Goyf permanents if they hit the graveyard from anywhere but the battlefield. It's quite good and makes Goyfs more playable in a 4-player format. This is why cards like Conspiracy are very powerful, because it means any creature you discard or mill gets to be put onto the battlefield thanks to Disa. Other cards that work well with Disa, like Conspiracy, includes Maskwood Nexus and Ashes of the Fallen. I don't really like playing Changeling cards to satisfy creature type needs, so I chose not to play Maskwood Nexus, but I know that it does come in the precon, so I'll recommend keeping that for your own deck. And I like the old art for Conspiracy from Marcadian Masks. If you want more of this effect, I recommend playing all 3 of these cards. Buried Alive is incredibly powerful when Dis is in play, as you can spend 3 mana to find 3 Goyfs and put them all into the battlefield. I would suggest finding Pyrogoyf, Necrogoyf, and Baragoyf, with Pyrogoyf being the best one. Pyrogoyf is always going to be your best Goyf to play, since Pyrogoyf turns all the Goyfs from Disa's second ability into direct damage burn spells. This means you can use them to destroy creatures to clear the way, to create more Goyfs, or deal damage directly to your opponents to close the game. Talking about Goyfs, I kept all of them from the precon except for Altar of the Goyf, and I added Magnivore, Terravore, and Detritivore. But back to Conspiracy. If you have a Conspiracy effect, then you could find any 3 creature you want and cheat them all into the battlefield. I'm sure you can find very powerful creatures, but I'm only interested in getting Goyfs and Bloodbraid Elves, so yeah. Oh, I heard about this wild conspiracy the other day, that the Earth is round. Yeah, boy, I'm doing a deck tech right now. Do you mind not interrupting? Oh, my bad. Sorry, everyone. Discard effects are good of Disa, as discarding Goyf creatures will cheat them in, thus negating the usual negative cost of discarding a card. Tortured Existence is a cheap enchantment that lets you discard creatures to bring back other creature cards to hand. Chainer, Nightmare Adept, and Fauna Shaman are also quite good for this reason. I'll get to the lands later, but I also play as many MDFC cards from Modern Horizons 3 as possible, so Fauna Shaman can also help you find land cards that are creatures in the front. For Disa's second ability, there's 2 ways to build around it. First is making sure your creatures connect to make more Goyf tokens. I play Brawn to give all my creatures trample if I control a forest. This lets my larger Goyf creatures connect on an opponent even if they have blockers. I find Loyal Apprentice is very powerful with Disa, as Loyal Apprentice creates Flying Thopters of haste immediately that can help you connect on multiple opponents as the game continues. A Loyal Apprentice should make it very easy for you to create 3 Goyf tokens a turn. The other way to synergize with the second ability is doubling the creature tokens you create from Disa. This includes staples like Doubling Season, Parallel Lives, or Second Harvest. None of these cards are in my deck because they're outside of my budget for what I want to do, but if you own these cards, I will recommend playing them too. The rest of the deck are classic Jund cards from decks I've competed with. Most of them won't be very good in Commander, but I don't know. I like them. The original Jund standard deck was from the 2009 Shards of Alara Zendikar standard format. The most brutal curve was turn 2 Putrid Leech, turn 3 Blightning into turn 4 Bloodbraid Elf, cascading into another permanent or spell like Sprouting Thrinax. Great era of Magic. The Disa precon has a lot of references to this classic Jund deck, such as Bloodbraid Chief, Infected Thrinax, and Siege Gang Lieutenant as a reference to early Jund's finisher of Siege Gang Commander. Also, the deck comes with Broodmate Tyrant as a reference to Broodmate Dragon, which I did add to my deck. Putting 8 power in the air for 6 mana was quite strong back in the day, so I wanted to play here as well. I added Blightning even though it's bad in multiplayer. I just like the card. Yo, that seems brutal if someone only has like 2 cards in hand. YaBoi. Oh, my bad again. In 2011, Jund got one of its most iconic cards, Liliana of the Veil. Lily of the Veil does synergize with Disa, allowing you to break parity of the table-wide discard, since you can pitch a Goyf to defend her, which is one of the coolest things that I've ever heard. Lilies are still quite expensive at $16, so I didn't include it in the budget version I'm recommending because I don't think it's worth the gameplay value, but as a Jund deck, Lily is a must-have, so I'll be playing Lily in my personal list. You can decide what you want to do. Also from Innistrad is Huntmaster of the Fells. In terms of value, you really can't beat it. Huntmaster gives you life, a 2/2 wolf token, and also flips into a shock for both the creature and the owner or planeswalker they control. Being able to get repeated value from a Huntmaster was extremely powerful in its time, and while it's currently outclassed these days for its mana value, I felt Huntmaster was worthy of a place in my Disa deck. The original Olivia Voldaren was also very powerful at picking off creatures and turning your excess mana into more power to close the game. She's another iconic Jund card I will recommend out of principle, but currently at $8, I don't feel she's worth the price, so adjust accordingly. Bonfire of the Damned is one of the most memorable cards of the 2013 Standard era. Being able to flip a bonfire at the right time late in the game was enough to turn the entire board state to your favor, and no matter what, casting bonfire off the top is always going to feel really cool. I'm also playing Scavenging Ooze here. It's a great way to exile important cards from the graveyard, but also just a green staple creature that we still see today in other formats. You know what they say? YaScooze, they lose. Oh, that's actually pretty good. Don't encourage them. Then from Return from Ravnica block, I added one of my favorite spells, Rakdos' Return. It's kind of like a fireball combined with lightning. Yo! And was extremely punishing later in the game if your opponents held onto their spells, and you were able to resolve even a 5 or 6 mana Rakdos' Return to trim down their hand and apply pressure. I like this card a lot, so it's in my Disa deck. I added Vraska from this version of Jund, which in her original printing was much more valuable than she is today at about $1 a copy. Vraska deters opponents from attacking her with her uptick, but also her -3 non-land permanent destruction was more than enough to play the long game. She doesn't do much in Commander since your quantity of turns is so much less than 1v1 formats, meaning Vraska just doesn't have as many opportunities to uptick and control the table, but she was really cool in her time, so I just want her in my deck. While not specifically from a Jund deck, I also added Lotleth Troll, who synergizes with Disa's first ability, grows itself, and is kind of nostalgic to me anyways. 2016 Jund looked very different than the other versions I talked about just now. You had early cards that scaled well, like Sylvan Advocate, to late game finishers like Dragon Lord Atarka itself. In a way, I guess Atarka played a similar role to Broodmate Dragon in 2011 as a top-end finisher to Jund Ram. It's kind of cool. 2 cards I added from this iteration of Jund includes Tireless Tracker, which gives you card draw and power off land drops, and also Kolaghan's Command, which is so flexible and efficient for its cost that we still see this card today in Pioneer and Modern, even though it's more of a sideboard card, but still pretty good. A card I would also add that is quite expensive because of Pioneer and low printings is Kalidas, Trader of Get. Being able to convert creatures you remove to 2/2 zombies is actually quite powerful with 3 opponents, meaning there's more creatures dying. You also exile their creatures from the graveyard, so it eliminates some graveyard-focused decks as well. However, at $13, I can't really recommend it if you want to play this deck casually. From Jund Delirium, I added in Grimflayer, which does trigger Disa through their damage trigger, and Traverse the Ulvenwald, which helps us find our basics, but also since we're going to be trying to put multiple permanent types into our graveyard to grow our Goyfs, it should satisfy Delirium quite easily.
You seem certainly satisfied.
Designer, please. To make up for not having Lily of the Veil in the deck, I'm recommending Liliana Last Hope, who was underestimated at first, but quickly proved herself as a great tool to control the board. She can also recur creatures and have a strong emblem that will close out the game. So, The way this deck plays is relatively straightforward. You just want to keep playing permanents, focus on either setting up for synergy with discarding Goyfs to Disa, or getting creatures through to create Goyf tokens. Because Disa is so central to the deck's plan, you want to be focusing on getting hands that have all the mana sources for Disa. This is why I'm playing an assortment of mana dorks, rocks, and land ramp to make sure we can cast our commander reliably and hopefully before turn 5. The deck's mana curve is pretty balanced, so in most situations you'll be able to spend all your mana each turn pretty efficiently. Since this deck is referencing classic Jund play patterns, I also included lands that animate into creatures. So this includes Raging Ravine, Hissing Quagmire, Lava Claw Reaches, to Restless Cottage. A lot of these come to play tapped, and I know players are adverse to it, but at this budget, I don't really care about that. So you're free to adjust. The casting costs of this deck's spells are quite demanding. That's why I'm alright with having more tapped lands that provide multiple colors over more basics that come into play untapped, because it's more important that we cast our spells later in the game than early. Most of our haymakers come after turn 4 or 5. For Modern Horizons 3, I added almost every MDFC spell land into the deck. So this gives the deck a little more value later when we don't need as many lands and would rather have a spell instead. And most of these spells are actually quite decent and come to play untapped for the cost of 3 life. So the deck in total has 24 lands and 10 MDFCs, totaling to 34 land sources. And this excludes the ramp, mana dorks, talismans, and everything else. So we should be pretty good.
Show everyone your Goyf pillow.
For the last time, I don't have a Goyf body pillow. Anyways, that's my Disa classic Jund deck. If you like it, I don't know, get it. If not, don't get it. It's not really my problem. If you want to see how I piloted Disa, please watch our precon battle video. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye.